So good evening and welcome to this edition of Eyeway Encounters. We are continuing with our series, the RPWD Act 2016 Unpacked. And today we have Dr. Ramachari, who's going to be speaking to us. She is the Executive Director of DEOC, and she's been working in the advocacy field and in the area of law and also employment and the private sector for many years now. She's also spent a lot of time working with the legendary famous advocate for disability, Javed Abidi, at NCPDP. So she's a very experienced person, and she will be speaking about the RPWD Act 2016 and the private sector. We're not talking about jobs or giving jobs to people. We're talking about what is the law. We're trying to, in this session, trying to understand what the law says about private sector and how does the law impact the private sector in terms of hiring, in terms of services, in terms of facilities, reasonable accommodation, and so on. So this event is also being shown live on Facebook. So those of you who can switch on your cameras, it will be great, because then the pictures will show on Facebook also. Otherwise, if there is a problem with bandwidth, then just don't bother about the video. So Rama, the field is yours. You could probably say a few words about DEOC before you actually start.
Okay. Thank you, George. Should I speak in English, or what was the thing in Hindi, English?
I think a Hindi-English mix will be good.
Okay. So I first want to say that I haven't spoken Hindi for a very long time, ever since I moved to Bangalore. तो मेरी हिंदी बहुत अच्छी नहीं है क्योंकि प्रैक्टिस नहीं है. वैसे मैं दिल्ली में बहुत साल रही हूँ, लेकिन बैंगलोर आने के बाद हिंदी तो इस्तेमाल ज़्यादा होता नहीं है. So DEOC is a private organization, you could say a social enterprise. जो शुरू हमने जब किया था, we consciously said that we will not set it up an NGO. See, I was a professional in the field of disability. तो मैंने सोचा मैं क्या करूं, I moved to Bangalore. I will work with multiple organizations or stay with one organization. Then I decided that, I can work with multiple organizations, being a consultant. So that is where I decided, and a few of us we said we will kind of be consultants, which means that we are employed with multiple organizations. Whoever wants our service, they can take. So इस तरह से जब हमने अपना शुरू किया था, definitely NGO sector में, in the disability sector, people said surviving is quite difficult, because where is the, a market, why would anybody pay? That was not ever our intention. But interestingly, it's now 14 years since we set up DEOC. और हम क्या काम करते हैं? हम policy में काम करते हैं. Now, with, of course, the RPWD Act, I'll talk more about it. Every establishment should have a policy. So हमने एक sample policy बना के website में डाला है, but anyone who wants to have a policy, they reach out to us. They want to do their processes. I'll talk more about processes. They reach out to us. Accessibility is a major field. It's a growing field. It's also a market in that sense. Building accessibility ho, ya IT accessibility ho, ya services accessibility ho. We provide the range of services for accessibility. We also do a lot of training, do a lot of research in the area of accessibility. So we are a team of multidisciplinary kind of professionals, where some people have, some of us have done a master's in disability studies or special education. There are universal design architects. There are technology specialists. So in that sense, it's a kind of a multidisciplinary. that is our, that is the work that we do. Coming to the RPWD Act, I will share my screen. And anytime, feel free to, ask questions by either putting it on chat or, even just unmuting and speaking. कि कोई ऐसा नहीं है कि डिसरप्शन नहीं हो सकता, कहीं पे भी आप डिसरप्ट कर सकते हैं और बोल सकते हैं, बिकॉज जितना इंटरैक्टिव होगा उतना सबके लिए अच्छा होगा. सो ये जो डिसेबिलिटी एक्ट 2016 कंपेयर टू द 1995 एक्ट, वन ऑफ द बिग कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन, जो बहुत बड़ा चीज है, वो है प्राइवेट सेक्टर. बिकॉज 1995 का जो एक्ट है उसमें रिजर्वेशन था एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए, इवन एक्सेसिबिलिटी के लिए था, पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट एक्सेसिबल होनी चाहिए, बिल्डिंग्स एक्सेसिबल होनी चाहिए, लेकिन इट वाज ऑल गवर्नमेंट. उसकी वजह से you could see some metro has become accessible and a few things, आप ramps here and there in the government offices वगैरह देख सकते हैं. लेकिन private sector to great extent was untouched. Thanks to this law, in the last 5 years, there is some movement happening in the private sector, but definitely the law includes private sector. And when they've also defined the private sector, एक तो एस्टैब्लिशमेंट का एक जहां शब्द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट का इस्तेमाल हुआ है, wherever the word establishment, it not just means government establishment, it also means private establishment. That is in the definition. Another definition is a private establishment. What is a private establishment? That has also been clearly said: a company, a firm, cooperative or a society, association, trust, agency, institution, organization, union, factory, and such other establishments. So if you really see, the entire range has been given, including non-government organizations. Many people may not know, even this law applies to NGOs. This law applies to factories, because earlier factories, many factories कहते थे कि भाई हम employ नहीं कर सकते people with disabilities को, हमारा तो factory है. लेकिन ये वाला जो act है, very clearly it applies to every establishment. Another important thing जो ये act का जो basis है, ये non-discrimination क्या है? Very clearly the act says no person with disability shall be discriminated on the grounds of disability. यहाँ पे देखिए एम्प्लॉयमेंट या एजुकेशन या कोई ऐसा शब्द नहीं डाला है. इसका मतलब किसी भी चीज में ये वाला क्लॉज के साथ आप कर सकते हैं. एक और जो बहुत बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट ये है कि डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को भी डिफाइन किया हुआ है. Many people think that, direct, okay, what is discrimination? Direct discrimination. You cannot be doing, like, for example, a company cannot say, we only employ, orthopedically impaired people, हम blind को employ नहीं करेंगे, या हम सिर्फ low vision को employ करेंगे, blind को नहीं employ करेंगे. That's a direct discrimination prohibited under this act. Indirect discrimination. For example, अगर आपका कोई vacancy है और उस कंपनी में आपको ऑनलाइन अप्लाई करना है, समझ लीजिए कि यू फिल एन ऑनलाइन फॉर्म या असेसमेंट ऑनलाइन करना है, there if that particular form is not accessible, or for that matter that assessment is not accessible, it doesn't provide that extra time or any other support that you need, even that is considered as discrimination, which is indirect discrimination is also prohibited in the act. जो तीसरा जो बहुत जरूरी है, जो सिर्फ इस एक्ट में है, डिनायल ऑफ रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन. अगर किसी को कुछ सपोर्ट असिस्टिव टेक्नोलॉजी हो सकता है, या रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन इज जो है बहुत बड़ा, आई विल एक्सप्लेन मोर अबाउट रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन, बट कुछ भी हो सकता है. इट कुड बी टाइमिंग, it could be wanting an assistive technology, it could be an assessment change, the range. वो भी अगर डिनाई होता है तो वो भी considered as discrimination. So that is why this discrimination is very, very crucial. So if someone is discriminated in any such way, including denial of discrimination, denial of reasonable accommodation, वो कोर्ट में जा सकता है. और इसमें रूल्स में और इसको डिफाइन किया हुआ है कि हेड ऑफ द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट, अगर ये प्राइवेट सेक्टर में अगर हेड ऑफ द एस्टैब्लिशमेंट को कोई कंप्लेंट जाता है कि भाई मैंने सीवी भेजा और मुझे डिस्क्रिमिनेट किया है या मेरे को इंटरव्यू किया, एंड यू फील दैट यू बीन डिस्क्रिमिनेटेड, यू कैन राइट to the head of the organization, and head of the organization should reply back saying why something was done. They should write to you back. And also somewhere very clearly says reasonable accommodation का जो खर्चा है वो establishment को उठाना चाहिए. They cannot ask a person with disability to pay for it or fully pay for it or partly pay for it. And रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन का जो है, एक मेरे पास एक स्लाइड है, मैं आई डिस्क्राइब द स्लाइड फॉर यू. मेनी पीपल अंडरस्टैंड दे थिंक दैट ट्रीटिंग एवरीवन द सेम इज इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी. मतलब सबको, ये पहले होता था कि भाई हमारा क्लासरूम है, जैसा है वैसा रहेगा, आपको आना तो बैठ जाइए, हम सबको एक जैसे ट्रीट करेंगे, जिसका मतलब ये है कि हम अपनी तरफ से कुछ और एक्स्ट्रा नहीं करेंगे, हमने आपके लिए फेवर कर दिया है, आप बैठे क्लास में. तो ये वाला जो फर्स्ट वाला पिक्चर है वो वही है. इसमें जो मैं डिस्क्राइब कर रही हूँ, ये एक कोई गेम हो रहा है, सॉकर या सम गेम इज हैपनिंग, और ये 3 लड़के हैं, एक छोटे हाइट का है, एक मीडियम हाइट का है, एक लंबे हाइट का लड़का है.
Ramachari, I'm interrupting you, but you haven't shared screen yet.
Oops.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I've been, yeah. I thought it was shared.
Yeah, now we can see.
Thanks for letting me know. I was clueless.
Okay, thank you.
I'll slowly run past those who can see, just to kind of show you the slides done so far. Fine, thanks. So ये वाला जो है, 3 लड़के हैं जो 3 हाइट के हैं, छोटा वाला हाइट है और एक मीडियम हाइट वाला है, टॉल हाइट वाला है. सबको एक जैसा स्टूल दे रखा है, एक ही साइज का. जो टॉल लड़का है वो बहुत अच्छे से देख रहा है, मजे से देख रहा है. जो मीडियम हाइट वाला है वो भी देख रहा है अच्छे से, लेकिन जो छोटे हाइट वाला है वो देख नहीं सकता है, क्योंकि वो एंड शायद वो वॉल में थोड़े से गैप्स हैं, उसमें देख रहा है, लेकिन उसको अच्छे से दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है. ये है ट्रीटिंग एवरीवन द सेम, जहां पे सबको एक जैसा स्टूल मिलेगा, भले आपका हाइट जैसा भी हो. देन देयर इज अनदर पिक्चर हियर जो राइट साइड में है. यहाँ पे क्या किया है कि फर्स्ट जो टॉल पर्सन है उसको तो स्टूल दिया ही नहीं, जो सेकेंड मीडियम हाइट वाले को 1 स्टूल और छोटे हाइट वाले को 2 स्टूल, और तीनों के तीनों मजे से वो देख रहे हैं. तो दिस इज कॉल्ड रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन और क्रिएटिंग अ लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड. और अगर ये देखें, रीजनेबल अकोमोडेशन और एक्सेसिबिलिटी का जो डिफरेंस है ये है, इट्स वेरी इंडिविजुअलाइज्ड. अगर किसी को 2 स्टूल की जरूरत है तो उसको 2 स्टूल मिल रहा है. इट्स नॉट दैट ही इज गेटिंग प्रेफरेंशियल ट्रीटमेंट, नो, दिस इज प्रमोटिंग इक्वालिटी. So therefore, it is individualized and accommodation should be provided. This is the reasonable accommodation. Is there a better picture than this? Yes, there is a better picture. अगर आप देखें कि वो जो wall है उसको निकाल के उन्होंने net कर दिया है, which means that कोई बैरियर ही नहीं है, वो बैरियर को ही निकाल के नेट बना दिया है, जिससे क्या हो जाता है, दिस इज यूनिवर्सल डिजाइन. इसमें किसी को स्टूल की जरूरत ही नहीं है, किसी को अकोमोडेशन की जरूरत ही नहीं है. दिस इज अ यूनिवर्सल डिजाइन. दिस इज समथिंग इज एस्पिरेशनल. ये पॉलिसी में बनाते समय भी हम ये सोच सकते हैं कि जैसे एग्जाम है, समझ लीजिए एग्जाम में स्पीड की जरूरत नहीं है. आई मीन, सो व्हाट दे डू इन सम एग्जाम्स इज दैट आप जितना टाइम होना है ले लीजिए, ये हर बच्चे के लिए है. Then automatically somebody with a vision disability or somebody with difficulty using hand need not ask for extra time. So the paper ही ऐसा डिजाइन किया है that everyone can take whatever time that you need. Speed is not being considered. So that is universal design in conducting an exam, for example. There is universal design, of course, in products and services. And अभी तो काफी इसमें फोकस हो रहा है, एटलीस्ट इंटरनेशनली काफी फोकस हो रहा है, हाउ डू वी मेक टेक्नोलॉजी, यू नो, आईफोन आपका एग्जांपल है ही जो यूनिवर्सली डिजाइंड है, सो यू डोंट हैव टू बाय अ सेपरेट सॉफ्टवेयर और यू नो procure extra, you know, whereas if you want to buy jaws you will have to pay extra to buy it, whereas if you buy an iPhone at the same cost it is accessible for you. So even buildings, everything you should aspire for universal design.
I think Sandeep Singh wants to ask a question. I think he's raised his hand.
Yes, please. I'm not able to see who has raised, so somebody can help me.
Sure,
that
certainly.
I'll be able to
certainly,
see.
certainly.
So we want to, so you said you want to do like an interactive session. So you're
Yes,
okay
please.
taking questions.
Perfect.
Sandeep, if you are
Yeah, am I audible?
yeah,
To?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want. I'm a CAT aspirant. I am aspirant, and I am a multiple physically handicapped. Multiple. I'm a PWD 5 category student, and I'm a low vision disabled and left hemispheresis. It's like that. And the main thing which I want to convey, my first thing is that I'm not disabled from birth. There was an accident which ruined my life. Now I have a question that equal opportunity is there. You just mentioned, ma'am, equal opportunity. Now in education sector, what about the equal opportunity for all the PWD types? Because if we talk about education sector, PWD 1 and 2, they are the people who take the most number of seats of IIM. But PWD 5, 3, 4, these candidates don't get any seat. In fact, they get rarely any seat. I just want to ask you, what about the equal opportunity in the education sector? Can you please put
What
some
is
light on it?
2, 3, 4?
Ma'am, PWD 1 is orthopedically handicapped.
Okay.
PWD 2 is low, I guess, vision wise. PWD 2 is vision wise, and 3 is hearing and all. 4 is intellectual learning, and 5th is multiple disability. It's like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, ये जो एजुकेशन सेक्टर में जब ये 5% का लिखा है हायर एजुकेशन में, दे डोंट गिव एनी बाइफर्केशन, जैसे एम्प्लॉयमेंट में है कि 1% जाएगा यू नो ऑर्थोपेडिक के लिए, 1% इसके लिए जाएगा, लेकिन जब 5% का लिखा है एजुकेशन इसमें, दे हैव नॉट गिवन दैट बाइफर्केशन. इससे मैंने भी ये देखा है, दिस इज अ रियलिटी दैट this 5% can be divided by, you know, all of them being one disability. They are adhering to the law. It is very much it's something that is there in the law, which is unfortunate. But having said that, I am may क्योंकि I also work with IM in providing reasonable accommodation. In the last few years, I've seen so many people post accident who have come, or quadriplegic who have come to IM Bangalore at least, and they have done, IM का policy है जो हमने हेल्प किया था कि जो कैंपस में everything will be provided to make the person independent in the campus, which means that if the person needs a caregiver, if person needs the motorized wheelchair, everything is being provided you know, for students with disability, including, you know, a larger residential kind of an apartment where they can stay with their caretaker and all that. So they're doing everything that is possible, but I understand your point.
I just want to say one thing. Extremely sorry again to interrupt.
No, please.
That means I am or I have filed many RTIs and all those things just to know if I have, means if really five type person have any seats reserved or not. But what I got is no. I completely understood your point, and I am Bangalore is the best I am, which is doing the work for PWD persons. I can understand this thing also. I am Bangalore is the best I am, which is very much accommodating all the what we say physically handicapped person. But why it is like that means we guys we are also like we don't have enough money to pay the fee and all those things. Means and I am going into IIM means it's a total what we say expense of 30 lakhs. Means they should think at least once that they are accommodating a person who is a who is not normal. I hate to say this word, but who is not normal. Means I'm extremely sorry. I don't want to hurt anyone's feeling, but who is I'm I myself I'm feeling very bad to use this word, but matlab, if I'm not means uh, they should lay some in the fees also. I mean
No,
I'm
see,
very much.
I understood your point, Sandeep. Yes. See, as far as fees is concerned, there are scholarships available, and some in certain cases, IMs also have another scheme within there. They waive students, not just people with disabilities, those who come from lower socioeconomic background. You do have loans, etc. That's a different thing altogether.
Means we can't do anything in this case. Means
Which case?
reservation for all the PWD types. Means I just want to
See,
ask
if
you.
you've received a RTI saying no, ये गलत बात है. That no का क्या मतलब है? There is a reservation for people with disabilities and with all types of disabilities. 21 categories जो हैं सबके लिए reservation है. So they cannot say no. So I would like to see what your RTI answer is, and then accordingly we can see what can be done for it.
Sure, kindly you can.
And I do know some people are working
क्योंकि
on
प्राइवेट सेक्टर है ना, वर्क फ्रॉम होम ही चल रहा है सारे प्राइवेट सेक्टर का, कोई भी अभी तक स्टार्ट नहीं हुआ.
Yeah. Moving on. कोई सवाल और कोई सवाल है?
We have a question from Deshpande. He's saying
Sure.
code to approach in case of grievance not attended by employer.
Repeat it again.
Which court can we approach in case the grievance is not, attended by the employer?
So the first court that you should go to is the Commissioner's Court, the Disability Commissioner's Court, because that is easy to access. You don't need to have a lawyer or anything like that. It is very easy to access. And anyway, अगर वहां से जवाब नहीं आता है, तो then you can go for higher courts. I would say first place to go to is the Commissioner's office. Okay, moving on.
Just one sec, Rama, one sec. There seems to be somebody's mic which is unmuted, and there's a lot of disturbance coming in.
Can the host mute everyone, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
House. Now, cool. Pronouncing the thought is talking. Hold your send card to hear the distraught face. W/Rio and A and Pratty Kunal. Tap to listen.
And I would suggest that
Yes.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would suggest that we take the questions in the end. Otherwise, the flow is
got
getting affected. Yeah.
All right. I agree. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So what we saw is that equality and non-discrimination is the crux of this act, and discrimination also means denial of reasonable accommodation is also considered as discrimination. And we saw what reasonable accommodation really is. And also this particular act, of course, education, talking about education.
सर हम भी पूछना चाहते हैं.
अभी let me present it, उसके बाद हम सवाल रखेंगे. We'll have ample time. I'll quickly present it and then we'll have ample time to have questions. So education, I don't have the slide here. With education also you have, very clearly says all schools recognized. So which actually means it's not just government school, it also educational institutions, not just schools. Educational institutions includes the private schools as well. So private educational institutions, even though you may not have reservation in the private colleges or in private schools, but they're bound by this act to provide reasonable accommodation, barrier-free environment, individualized support, curriculum changes if required, all that should be provided by the private schools and colleges, institutions as well. When it comes to employment, there are several things that an employer is expected to do. Pehla, they have to frame an equal opportunity policy. They have to notify an equal opportunity policy और इसको कमिश्नर के पास रजिस्टर करना है ये वाला पॉलिसी. ये प्राइवेट ही नहीं, ये गवर्नमेंट, all establishment. It's both government and private establishment, and they should also put it up on their website. They have to put up that thing on their website. So अगर आप किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में अप्लाई कर रहे हैं और आप वहां जाते हैं और आपके वेबसाइट में उनका वो इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी पॉलिसी नहीं है, तो एक्चुअली वो लॉ को वायलेट कर रहे हैं. You can actually write to them saying that you're supposed to have this equal opportunity policy on your website. दूसरा जो है, जो इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी पॉलिसी को और डिफाइन किया हुआ है रूल्स में. रूल्स में ये है कि क्या क्या उस, ये नहीं कि सिर्फ हम भी यार इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी एम्प्लॉयर ब्ला ब्ला, ये सिर्फ स्टेटमेंट नहीं है. यू हैव टू डिटेल इट आउट. You have to detail it out saying what facilities and amenities are being provided for persons with disabilities, list of posts that have been identified, the manner of selection, आप कैसे select करेंगे, आपके barrier free environment के लिए आपने क्या किया है, और last but not the least, liaison officer कौन है और उस establishment का. ये भी requirement है for all establishment to appoint this liaison officer who is responsible for providing the any support that you would need. So ये सब जो है ये private sector को करना है. यहाँ पे कोई timeline नहीं दे रखा है कि कब तक करना है. इसका मतलब जब बन गया था तभी करना था, 5 साल हो गए हैं. So they should have done it by now. If they have not done it, जितने organizations ने नहीं किया वो actually अभी वो law को violate कर रहे हैं. और एक और जो इंपॉर्टेंट लिखा है कि यू शुड मेंटेन रिकॉर्ड्स ऑफ पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटीज. आई रिमेम्बर बहुत साल पहले हम लोगों ने जब डेटा मांगा था प्राइवेट सेक्टर से कि कितने लोग एम्प्लॉयड हैं, तो मोस्ट पीपल, ऑलमोस्ट 100% पब्लिक सेक्टर में था क्योंकि रिजर्वेशन है, लेकिन प्राइवेट सेक्टर में बहुत कम लोग ऐसे डाटा रखते हैं बिकॉज दे डोंट नो हाउ टू आस्क दिस क्वेश्चन अबाउट डिसेबिलिटी. तो they think it is offensive to ask questions about disability, और या उनको पता नहीं है कैसे पूछना है, तो ये रिकॉर्ड मेंटेन होता ही नहीं है. अब इस लॉ के बेसिस पे आपको हर एस्टैब्लिशमेंट विच मींस प्राइवेट एस्टैब्लिशमेंट के पास भी ये डेटा होना चाहिए कि कितने लोग एम्प्लॉयमेंट है. डेफिनेटली ये कॉन्फिडेंशियल डेटा होगा, लेकिन एग्रीगेट नंबर्स तो बता सकते हैं कि भाई हमारे इसमें 50 लोग हैं, 25 लोग हैं, जो है. And of course, अगर कोई complaint वगैरह होता है तो the commissioner can access this data. वहां पे भी फॉर्म कैसा होना चाहिए, क्या क्या उसमें होना चाहिए, नेम, जेंडर, एड्रेस, डिसेबिलिटी क्या है, किस तरह के काम करते हैं, किस तरह का फैसिलिटी मिला हुआ है, ये सब रिकॉर्ड प्राइवेट सेक्टर को मेंटेन करना चाहिए एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए.
Sorry, like one question. Like if it's fine to ask it now, or I can.
Yeah, if you can wait, then I'll finish it and then we can ask.
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Okay.
Plus what is being given, ये तो पहले भी था, 1995 Act में भी था. Incentives would be provided. Incentives would be provided to private sector for, this is both private and public sector, to ensure 5% of their workforce is comprised of persons with benchmark disability. So, but what are these incentives? वही चलते आ रहे हैं अभी भी. वो ESI का और PF का जो employer contribution है वो वापस मिलेगा, but I don't think many employers are even taking that. So that is an important thing, but there are no more, incentives. Then accessibility, employment हो गया, employment में क्या क्या करना है प्राइवेट सेक्टर को, वो सब हो गया है. Now comes to accessibility. यहाँ पे भी है कि Very clearly it says no establishment will be granted permission to build any structure if the building plan does not adhere to accessibility standards. So प्लान जब सबमिट होता है, यूजुअली कोई भी कुछ बनाने, बिल्डिंग बनाने से पहले प्लान अप्रूव करना होगा, वहीं पे परमिशन नहीं मिलेगा इफ यू आर नॉट एक्सेसिबल. सेकेंड इज दैट योर सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ कंप्लीशन, एनओसी नहीं मिलेगा अगर आपने एडहियर नहीं किया. तो जो 45 सेक्शन 45 है वो कह रहा है कि ऑल पब्लिक बिल्डिंग्स, यहाँ पे बहुत जरूरी है द वर्ड पब्लिक बिल्डिंग्स. Many people think public buildings are government building. This is what happened in the 1995 Act. Public building को define करा था. It's not a private building. Public building means government building. लेकिन 2016 वाले Act में public building को define किया हुआ है. Even those building which are accessed by public at large, even if it's owned privately. Further, they have said what is a public building definition. Let me read it out for you. Yeah, government or private building used or accessed by the public at large, including a building used for educational or vocational purposes, workplace, commercial activities, public utilities, religious, cultural, leisure, recreational activities, medical or health services, law enforcement agencies, reformatories, judicial forums, railway stations, platforms, roadways, terminus, airports, waterways. So they further defined it. So it's very crystal clear that workplaces, commercial activities, every building, private temples and mosques, every place should become accessible for people with disabilities, and within 5 years time from the date of the notification of rules. So rules बना था, कब बना था? June 2017 में. तो by June 2022 every establishment should have become accessible. एक साल के अंदर, अभी एक साल के अंदर. And services, again they have further defined that service provider, whether government or private. Again services भी defined हुआ है act में, includes forms of delivery of services to the public at large, including housing, educational, vocational training, employment, career advancement, shopping, marketing, religious, cultural, leisure, recreational, medical, health, rehabilitation, banking, finance, insurance, communication, postal information, access to justice, public utilities, transportation. So all services अभी इतने हैं जो आपके एक्सेसिबल नहीं है, स्विगी, पेटीएम वगैरह वगैरह, दे शुड मेक देयर एक्सेसिबल. इसमें 2 साल का टाइमलाइन था बिकॉज दे थॉट टेक्नोलॉजी है, जल्दी कर सकते हैं. सिर्फ 2 साल का टाइमलाइन, वो 2019 जून में खत्म हो गया है. सो राइट नाउ whichever app is not accessible, they're actually violating the law. And they have given standards for accessibility, built environment के लिए harmonized guidelines. वैसे digital के लिए जो लिखा है rules में GIGW, Government of India, वहां पे I know there is some confusion to people कि GIGW जो है Government of India वाला private sector में लागू होता है कि नहीं. That is not important. What is the law saying is what is important. The law is saying that service provided, whether government or private, should adhere to accessibility standard. If you don't want to adhere to GIGW, adhere to WCAG. So sometimes I know that there is some confusion regarding this, but there is no confusion as far as I am concerned. The law is very clear. You have to adhere to standards. Yes, rules में उन्होंने GIGW लिखा है, but that is you have to adhere to it, or you adhere to WCAG standards. And of course, documents should be in accessible PDF or EPUB format. So this is what, the private sector. And of course, there are penalties for not adhering to so any private sector which does this, you can go to the commissioner's office or high court wherever you want to go to, special courts, you can complain about it. And if they have violated, then there will be punishment, there will be penalties. If you write to the commissioner, commissioner writes to the private sector saying कि आप मुझे दिखाइए ये सब चीजें. अगर private sector is not replying to it, then there is also fine. So they have to, if commissioner अगर मांगते हैं कुछ चीज, तो private sector has to give. So there is also a fine related to it. But what I've seen is that, based on my experience, commissioners and state commissioners are not being very proactive in demanding from the private sector basis this law. अगर किसी ने मतलब 1 साल पहले RTI किया था कि भाई कितने इक्वल अपॉर्चुनिटी पॉलिसीज आपके पास आए हैं, बिकॉज आपके पास सबमिशन होने हैं. दिल्ली में शायद कुछ 1000 आए थे, बाकी में 2-3. Imagine the number of establishment. यहाँ पे ये नहीं लिखा है कि when it says establishment, doesn't say how many people in an establishment. रूल्स में लिखा है कि डिटेल्ड ईओ पॉलिसी बनना चाहिए, 20 or more people employed, then you need to have a detailed but the law does not say 20 or more. Law says every establishment should submit their policy. Many of the state governments are not even aware, because there are people who ask me that bhai kahan hame where do we submit our commissioner, how can we submit, is there a format for submitting, because it should be submitted only once or it should be submitted annually. Ye sab clear hai hi nahi. So a lot of ambiguities there in terms of how to submit this EO policy to the commissioner. ठीक है, वो ambiguity हो सकता है, but having said that, you can put it up on your website, you can announce it in this thing, put it up on your notice board, wherever, send an email to the commissioner. So that is what is happening in with regard to the private sector and employment. I will take a pause here, and you can ask me any question at this point.